This is the Partner for Leads Biz podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's a podcast for those of you who want to build your business in a smarter, relationships-first way. Welcome to another episode. This is your host, Roberto Hernandez. Dr. Margaret Meloni is a teacher, author, entrepreneur, and she's my mastermind buddy. She recently successfully defended her dissertation on compassion in the Pali Canon, which, among other things, constructed geographical maps of where early Buddhism spread and also social networks. She has a long-running history in teaching at UCLA in project management-related topics, and Margaret also has an online business that helps others be the best project managers they can be. Adding published author to her list of accomplishments with her first book, Margaret has written Carpooling With Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless. We talk work life, coaching, networking for introverts, lofty goals, accidental opportunity, and much more. She's been a personal inspiration to me, and I'm excited to be sharing her work and our discussion with you. Here is me and Dr. Margaret Meloni. I guess it's worth mentioning to listeners that you and I are acquainted through a group, an organization, a thing called Upreneur. That is a mastermind community, online community, a rather large one for people who are on the journey of a personal branding type of business.
Yes.
And Chris Ducker, that magnet of Upreneur.
That's right.
Yeah. So
the one who started it all.
Yeah. Fun guy. You, I suppose I should let you share your thoughts on something that is Upreneur related. You went for the second year in a row to the Upreneur Summit, so it's a big conference. Could be any conference, but I guess speaking in terms of your experience with those conferences and maybe others that come to mind for small business owners, about, I guess the question is about what did you garner? What have you garnered from attending conferences? Those two wasn't the first one like 250, and this last one was closer to 400 in attendees? Is that right?
Yes, it definitely got bigger. But I will say, I think he did a good job of not making it feel bigger in all the right ways. It didn't feel impersonal or anything like that.
And why does someone want to pay for a ticket to go to London other than to see London, but all the way there to go to a conference like that? What did you get from them?
Well, this is a good point. Now, I, as a person, an entrepreneur or solopreneur working on my own, I have a tendency to combine conferences with vacation because it's practical and, you can write off some of the business expenses. Of course, you still have to pay for it. So I wouldn't go someplace super expensive if there wasn't value in the whole experience. But I think that something like a Upreneur, it's so many different topics that we need get addressed in a period of about, 2.5 days or 2 or 3 days long. Mm-hmm. I find a lot of it is really about I'm going to call it random networking, because now at this point, having worked with this group a few times, certainly there are people I see who I have met at other events. And so it's wonderful to see them. But then there's just that randomness of when you sit down at a table, you don't know who's going to be at that table. And somehow it seems to work out. Like there are people from this last November that I'm still in contact with, not all of them. But for me, a lot of it's that combination of what are you learning and who are you meeting? And I'm going to confess, and even though this is a group that does a lot of good networking, I tend to be one of the worst networkers ever. It doesn't come naturally to me. I don't enjoy it. I understand it's important, but I'm that person. If I walk away with 1 or 2 valuable contacts, I'm so happy with that, as opposed to some people are much better at this and they're more outgoing and they come home with like 20 contacts. That would be overwhelming to me. But a couple of really good close contacts, I love that. Yeah,
and I guess to toot Chris's horn for him, the organizer, I went to the first one, and so I missed last year's, but I still have things from that conference that I get to enjoy. There were, it was recorded for all of us, and I still have all that content that I can go through and rewatch the presentations from the presenters who were frankly all quite good. And like you said, there's the contacts, and many of them are part of his online membership community that we get to find if we didn't get their card,
right,
or whatever. And I'm like you. And, oh, by the way, until you just started with what you said about like combining a vacation with the conference, to especially one that is a lengthy trip, you're doing it right. I watched you do it twice, but it didn't really stick with me. Like, I should really do that. But now that you said it to me, I should really do that next time.
Well, it helps. I mean, some people say, well, why would you do that? It's like you're working all the time. But it's like, but no, I'm not. And I'm the kind of person that no matter where I am, and especially for all of us who work for ourselves, in some way or another, we're working all the time anyway. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't take breaks. Of course we do. But we're the one who's running things and spinning all the spinning plates. So even when I'm on a vacation, I'm still probably going to answer some communications.
Yeah.
So I may as well do it in London or Taiwan or the Philippines or, Singapore or wherever.
See, sneak preview to some of the exotic places she sees when she's on her way to a conference.
That's right. That's right. And it's worked out really well.
So the Partner for Leads community, the community from which this podcast was born, has young members, and it has, I'll just call them old. They're like my age, some members that are my age and some that are older. And it came to my attention recently that some of the younger ones, that networking is, for one reason or another, it's a new thing. And you mentioned that you consider yourself not the best networker in the world. And I was talking with another business owner earlier today about networking, and she's kind of a super networker, and she really believes in the value of it, and as I think we all do. And I confessed to her, I was asking her about being an introvert versus not, and knowing darn well that introverts often know how to network, but there are challenges there. And so since you kind of pegged yourself as not thinking of yourself as the best networker out there, what are some of the strategies that you use to make the best of something that you might find either, kind of difficult sometimes or awkward?
And I do completely relate to being an introvert also, by the way, just to get that out there. And I'm happy with it. I'm a happy introvert. Okay. So a couple of things I will do. I conserve my energy. So when I'm looking at an event, there are things I may participate in, and there's things I may not participate in. I try to participate as much as possible. But if I've been at something all day long, and if at the end of the day there's something really big and really loud with a lot of people, that might not be the thing for me. And early on, I'd get that, the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. But I'm not going to the big party. But I might be perfectly fine not going to the big party, even though the next day there's going to be great stories of people's drunken karaoke. I might be completely fine putting my feet up in my room and reading, and then I'm going to feel so much more, energized. Another thing, since I am an introvert, if I see someone sitting or standing by themselves, I'm probably going to walk up to them and talk to them, because it could just be a random moment where they're on their own, or it could be they're just kind of the same way. And so as an introvert, I value the more meaningful conversations with fewer people. I'm not saying super networkers can't have meaningful conversations, because of course they do. They just have the energy to have more of them. And so, if I see someone on their own, that's the person I'm going to go talk to. It's so many times that has just gone so well.
Yeah. And, I'm beginning to think, like the person I spoke with this morning, again, I consider her a super networker, but she said something very similar. And I feel like you and her, that the one-on-ones are fantastic. And she was probably speaking to the fact that sometimes she's all about it. She can float the room, but other times she just wants to talk to someone, and wasn't even up for the whole networking thing that night or that day, and she'll have a little bit of a deeper conversation with someone. So I suspect that introvert or extrovert or part-time introvert, part-time extrovert, that we all sort of value that one-to-one. So thanks for sharing that. I hope that if I have some of these young listeners listening to this episode, that they'll garner something from that. I need to stop and
Can I add one more thing before we go into mine?
Yeah.
One more thing I just want to add. That all of that being said, even though I manage myself based on who I am, I do push myself a little bit. So my first inclination is not always to walk up to a group of people that I don't know, but in these situations, I will push myself to do it. I will push myself to go out for lunches and dinners with people I don't know in order to get to know them. And I'm always glad that I did.
That's good.
Thank you.
It wasn't even intended as advice, but I think it's good advice. I want to say congratulations on a couple of things, or maybe a few things. First of all, you have a PhD now, Dr. Meloni. Congratulations. You successfully defended your dissertation. Is that how we say it in the non-PhD world?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
That's great. That must have been an experience. I got to see some photos of, I don't know if it was post or when they honor you with the official degree, but that looked like a lot of fun. And you very recently published a book. I was about to say your first, but is it really your first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is my first book. I contributed a chapter to a book a few years ago, but this is my first all Margaret all the time book.
And it's called Carpooling with Death, which I want to talk about during our conversation today. And I thought I should probably, talk about the fact that I want to talk about it. So, sorry for just springing that on you, but although hopefully it's a good thing.
It is.
Before we go there, I guess let's give a little context, related or not, because it might not seem like it is, but you have one side of your career is in project management and teaching. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as of late, because we speak on a regular basis, not hardly because of Upreneur. Well, I shouldn't say that. It actually is because of Upreneur, but we belong to a much smaller group that was born out of Upreneur at the encouragement of Upreneur. So we get to talk regularly, and we just started with a new one, and we should probably dissect that a little bit too. But I gathered from you as of late that you maybe, I don't know if it's a realization or just a decision that teaching is something that is kind of mainstay, something you continue to enjoy. Can you talk, to give context on part of your business, can you talk a little bit about the teaching that you do for project management and other things?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to go back to, let me think, a long, long, long time ago. Back in 2006 is when I started working on my own. And the truth is, I was going to do some coaching, which I did do. But I joined this professional coaches group, and I learned that a lot of the coaches in there had relationships with universities. And they said, this is good because it brings you recognition and credibility in work. And I just happened to find that at that time, UCLA School of Extension was looking for people to teach project management, which is what I had been doing for several years before I went out on my own. And I applied, and to my true, complete, and utter shock, they said, come in for an interview. And then to my next complete and utter shock, they hired me. And I say that because, I definitely had the experience in project management, but I hadn't really taught before. But I think their perspective was, well, if she doesn't do a good job, we never have to have her teach again, right? And so I started teaching. And one of the things that happened, I still was doing some coaching. But what would happen is every time I would start worrying about, am I going to do the right thing? Is anyone going to hire me for anything? How am I going to make money? I would get contacted to teach. And it happened enough times that I was like, oh, I get it. I'm a teacher. And I liked it. And for me, I began to understand that in some ways you can teach could be like a group coaching. And so that's how that evolved. And it's interesting because somebody who was in one of my early classes keeps in touch with me. And she just contacted me for a coaching session just last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's funny how it all evolves. But so, I have been in the world of teaching project management now for several years and loving it. But also evolving, my interest in evolving. I'm finishing the PhD, and the PhD is in Buddhist studies, which has nothing to do with project management other than, being a human being, which is a super important part of leadership. Right.
Indeed.
And then, and then when I come to it, and then, writing the book, that just comes from, and in my life, people have died, and I decided to write about it. And so everything evolves. So going back to, you talk about how we met through the Chris Ducker's Upreneur, and so much of that is about, your brand, as a solopreneur, your brand is many things. It's the personal and the professional.
That's right.
And I've just come to a place where I'm just really comfortable with that. maybe too comfortable with it. And so I work off of all those sides of it. I'm not sure I answered exactly what you asked. I think I went on a tangent. I apologize.
No, that's okay. And that's great that I like the way you finished that up. I think it is important for, frankly, everyone who has any sort of business or business aspiration has a personal brand of sorts to think about. And I think it is important to be yourself and let your customers know who you are, because it will help you align yourself with the best clients that you can possibly have, and align your customers with the best service provider that they can have. So that's very good. Can you share, for my own curiosity, in teaching and coaching, what it sounds like they lend themselves to one another in your world, and I was curious to know what, assuming there are some, what skill sets from coaching lend themselves to teaching? Because I thought I kind of heard that was the case, and curious to know if you had specifics as what coaching skill sets lend themselves to teaching.
I think it's the asking questions. And so that might sound funny because you might think, well, but you're the instructor or the teacher. People are asking you questions. And that's true. But sometimes the question that someone will ask isn't their real question. It's the question they'll ask in front of a group of people. And if you answer them and then ask some questions back, you may get more from them in order to provide better information, or that someone else in the room might piggyback off of that. And so it's really, because so much about coaching is really listening and then, helping someone decide a course of action. And I think in teaching, there's a lot of that too. I mean, you can just stand up there and spew information, and that can be very useful to people too, because people are relying on you having a certain degree of expertise. I just find it more fun when I can tailor what I'm saying to a group of people based on what they really need.
Sure. As you know, Margaret, I recently took on a couple of my first coaching clients in my musician world. And I was thinking of this, what you're talking about now, and this, and actually I, kind of went back to some references, some notes I take it from this book, The Coaching Habit, among some other resources that I had. And I think it was from that book, The Coaching Habit, that there's something the author says to the effect of, you have to fight that. I forgot, he has a funny phrase for it, but essentially fighting the urge to give advice and continue digging with questions and listening.
Sure. That makes total sense. And you are a good listener, as I know from our other conversations. So I'm sure you are really providing a great benefit to your coaching clients. I think that's amazing. Plus, you've been in their world. But I bet you still listen, even if you hear them tell a story and you're thinking, oh, that happened to me too. When you listen to their story, you think, oh, that happened to me too, but differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about your book a bit. I know, I know where it came from. Why don't you share with the listeners how it came about?
Well, I got to this point in life where I realized, and I'm going to say this because it's dramatic, death was coming, but not that dramatically. It just was more fun to say it dramatically. But I realized that I was at a point in life where, people around me were going to start going, and was I ready for this? And, at that point I had a mother-in-law who was in her late 90s, and my parents were in their 80s. My husband was older than I was at the time that I started having these realizations. I knew I would logically outlive him, but I didn't realize what was to come. And then I always think of it as the warning shot, if you'll please pardon the expression. My mother-in-law went first, which made sense because she was in her 90s. Mm-hmm. And I realized it's time to get ready, because for me, a big fear in my life wasn't necessarily my death, but the death of those whom I love. And so, life progresses, and sure enough, my father had lung cancer, and he ultimately died, but he just did such a good job through it. He was just such a good role model and positive. And he used to always say, well, no one gets out of this alive. And it was funny when he would say it, And he would say it in a way like a reminder, like he wouldn't be in our face like, hello, I'm dying. But, he would just like kind of a little reminder, and then, 2 years after he passed, my husband was diagnosed with the exact same lung cancer. And it also was found late, and, chemo didn't work. And we found ourselves in hospice. And then my dear mother, she passed 5 days before my husband Ed. And, I like to say now, what kind of son-in-law follows his mother-in-law? Like who does that? But the truth is, we knew Ed was dying. Now, of course, I should have known my mother was dying because she was 86. But she was 86 and relatively healthy. So her death was a surprise, and yet it wasn't a surprise. It was kind of the timing. And, I'm in no way trying to, I call it, morbid bragging or anything, because there are people who have gone through so much more. There are people who in recent natural disasters have lost their family in 5 minutes. But the book is just me making sense of all this and going through the process of dying with others and getting ready to be friends with death. And I call it making friends with death.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I don't know if I've asked you this before. I recently had an opportunity to catch up with a friend who lost his youngest or second youngest child, a very young little girl. And obviously devastating, but I had a chance to talk with him and just ask him some questions about how the family was processing. That's kind of one of the things that I do to try and hopefully, I guess relate, to the tragedy, and hopefully give them an opportunity to talk about something that they may not have otherwise had an opportunity to talk about. But that's something he pointed out to me. We were at a party, by the way, which is maybe an awkward place, some might think, to do that. But I hadn't seen him in a while, and I didn't know when I was going to see him again. And he said that, one of the, I think it was him, because we've had a couple of friends in the same area that had someone die, in their lives, and someone close. But he said that, that is the funny thing about it all, is that a lot of people just have no idea what to say. And then he took a case of his own sister, who he was having trouble processing what was going on with her. She just literally would not really talk about it. And for him, it was like, this is my own sister. And to which I said, well, yeah, we all do the best we can, I guess, with these situations. But does the book have anything to offer for that vantage point?
Yes, it does. And I want to first compliment you on talking to him about it at a party, because there's nothing wrong with that. If he was able to talk about it, then that's great. Because one of the things that happens to us and to your friend too is that, as he's observed, some people won't talk about it, and some people will ignore it, and some people will ignore you, and so, because they don't know what to do. Yeah. And so, some of your best friends will ghost you, which I guess is a little bit of a death pun, huh?
Yeah, good one.
Intended. So, so I think that the fact that you were willing to have a conversation with him, that's such a blessing, because again, some people just won't. So I do definitely talk about the different experiences that happen. And I have a couple of sections where I talk about how some people will disappoint you. And I talk about some of the weird experiences I had with people who are close to me. And I don't mean it in a blamey way. I just mean it in here's some things that happened to me. Weird things will happen to you too. Because I think one of my ideas behind the book is if, it's what I would want to sit down and tell my friends. And since I don't get to know everyone who buys the book, it's me speaking to them as a friend, here's a thing that will happen to you or something similar. So I've got that section. But then I also have a section on the people who will pleasantly surprise you. Because for me, one of the things that was so nice was some of the people who stepped up. I had no clue these would be people who would step up.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm a keen observer of death, but
I guess you are now, huh?
Well, all the things that we've talked about in talking about your book, and not just today, and things that I've read in it, having read the first of it, it's waiting for me to finish. But I've seen these things, and not in my own personal life necessarily. Maybe I've seen a couple of them, but I've witnessed them happen with others, the disappointment or whatever. So yeah, it seems like you cover a lot of basis. Okay, so to talk a little bit about, see if maybe we can have some conversation that hits home for someone that not related to death, but okay. So you have this book, and I remember it wasn't too long ago because we have the regular conversations that we have because of the masterminds. You were trying to figure out, this book was something you were passionate about and you really wanted to do, and you've done it, and you've done a great job. And, but you were working on like, okay, where's this going to fit in MargaretMeloni.com world or Margaret Meloni world, the business person? Does it fit? And you knew some things that you didn't want to do. If I remember right, you did not, I don't know if this is the way you said it, but you basically didn't want to don't want to be a grief counselor.
It's true. That's true. That's exactly what I said. You remember it correctly.
Well, so for anyone else who may have this one business world, and as I'm sure many people do, they have this crazy idea for a book that's not related to anything, although it is. I'm just being trying to be a little funny and dramatic, but how are you piecing it together in your world? So what are you going to do with it?
This is a good question because in some ways it doesn't. Project management instructor, author of a book on death. What do those two things have to do with one another other than being human? So it's very true. And I want to be in this place where I can be helpful to people I'm just another person in life who has experienced death. So how can I help you? And so to get to that place, what I'm working on is blogging and speaking and things like that. And those are things that I've been doing. And so that's how I can evolve and use my skill set that I've had, over the last few years, is I can use the teaching to go and speak to a group about the book. I can use the writing I've done in blogging and, creating materials and things like that to create blogs on this topic. And some days it does feel a little schizophrenic because people will say, oh, you can't don't do more than one thing. You can't do more than one thing. But I feel that I'm evolving, and that I'm always, part of me is always going to be a teacher. That's clear to me that that's who I am. But what I teach is going to probably gradually change. I may never fully leave project management because, in a sense, project managers have been my tribe. But I think that there are already some people in that tribe who look to me for more beyond how to create a schedule and more conversation on this is how it is as a human being. And so some of them will probably follow me, and I probably will gain new followers. And I'm beginning to work on how I segment my time so that I will continue to support my project management base. And as I take on new things, those new things are going to be more focused on, does this allow me to get my message out there? I call it death awareness, if you will. How does this allow me to participate in that?
That's great. It seems to me that the idea of what you're working on would lend itself to a lot of people who have a business, maybe not too unlike yours, and had this idea that seemingly has not a lot to do with their business. So maybe that's also a thing too, that people are going to come to you for, how did you make that other totally non-related thing work? And then you'll explain how it relates and how you're doing it. We also, as part of your journey with the book, you and I are both big fans of mastermind groups, and I've talked about them a little bit to the audience for this podcast because I'm a big believer. I talked about them with one of my coaching clients who is feeling a little maybe overwhelmed and scattered and seeming like they need some accountability. But so I don't even remember who first kicked the idea around, but three of us in a 4-person existing mastermind that is focused on the personal brand journey, sort of getting into the micro view, micro versus macro, comparing it to the larger community of viewpreneur. We decided that, hey, we had this common thing. You just published a book. I believe Lori, our other member of this new 3-person mastermind, which you call for us Writers Unite, which I like. She somewhat recently published one as well, and I thought, well, you know what, I'd like to learn from what the two of you are. Your game plan is going to be for your book launches and promoting your books, because I have published a book. It's been out for a while, and I want to do. There are a couple of things that I told you, I and Lori. I wanted to create a second edition to update it and make it a little better, but I also wanted to continue and improve upon existing promotions for the book. Mm-hmm. Where was I going with all of this? I'm not sure, but it was probably to the fact that, we created this mastermind. I have no idea where I was going with this.
I feel like maybe you were going down the path of a reminder, maybe of the value of the mastermind. And
that's exactly where.
Right?
That's definitely
the
part
value
of it.
So like we were already part of a mastermind where we have, I'm going to say, general goal setting business discussions. Mm-hmm. And now our Writers Unite, hopefully that isn't like somebody probably already owns that. Now I'm in trouble. Our Writers Unite is, like you said, taking the macro view of here's getting into the specifics. What are you really doing this week to get your book out there to people? And so it's about the value of a mastermind and maybe of a focused, specialized mastermind. Because I see value in both, right? Like it's good to have the general conversations, but then sometimes it's good to have those, I tried running this kind of ad on Amazon and it worked, or it didn't, or I went to BookBub and tried their advertising and this is what I experienced.
Yeah.
So that's really specific.
Yeah. And speaking from my own vantage point with the two groups, these two smaller masterminds that we're in, I get the benefit of that from all of the other participants of the groups, things that they've tried and suggestions they make. And they're so plentiful, I don't even have time to check them all out. But, I log them in my notes, and the ones that seem like, oh, yeah, I definitely have to look at that right now, I do. And they have almost always proven very helpful. And I probably, if I was, I could find out how organized of a note taker I am. There's probably a great archive of things that I should be revisiting occasionally, some things that I need to look at. You know what, Margaret? WritersUnite.com it's for sale, so somebody's bought it. Anyway, yeah, that's funny.
I'm glad you checked, though. That's awesome.
No, it was just funny. I knew it was sort of a joke, but I was laughing whether it was a joke or not, that, maybe I'm going to get in trouble. Maybe somebody already has that name, but it's just a mastermind group. We're not forming a business, or not yet, anyway.
We don't have our logo yet. We don't have T-shirts. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. How many, I know in the project management world, to talk a little bit more about masterminds. And by the way, thank you for helping me, bring me back where I lost my train of thought. I've had, so today, by the way, I'll be random again, but today was like a great work batching day for me, and it's surrounding my podcasting. So traditionally, I've been letting my interviews be scheduled throughout the week, letting my guests pick from dates that are available. And at the advice of someone we both know, I decided to make Fridays my days. So today was the first day that I had, pretty much back to back, but I had space between them, thank God. But I had 4 today, and I was actually, after the last one, I thought, wow, I'm really surprised and pleased that I haven't had one of these moments where I've completely lost my train of thought. But so that was the first one for today, and thank you for bringing me back. But I assume that in your project management world and your teaching world, at masterminds were in your life well before Youpreneur, and whether they were or not, I wanted to ask you, what is the value for you? And assuming that you're like me and you occasionally enlighten people it's surprising, I run across people all the time that don't know about them. What do you tell people about mastermind groups and why they should look into them?
Oh yeah, it is surprising to me how many people don't know about them. And I kind of find a dividing line. I find that a lot of us who work on our own, solopreneurs, that once we've been doing this for a little bit, we do know about masterminds. And I find that a lot of my friends who work for someone else out in the corporate world do not know about masterminds. And I suppose there's a certain kind of logic to that. Although I think there's a benefit anyway, because
Absolutely.
you could have like a career guidance mastermind. Yeah. That would have helped me early on, definitely, or not early on, all of the time. What I tell people is I say that a mastermind is a group of like-minded I probably will say entrepreneurs. I might sometimes say business owners who you can get together with and share ideas and keep each other accountable and provide, open and honest feedback.
Yep. And that accountability piece is so great. I was confessing to a coaching client. I don't know if this is good, but, I like to be honest with them that we were talking about the accountability thing, and I was sharing something that I had learned from, I was thinking about you, Lori, and Amari, and talking about accountability, and I just admitted to her, I'm like, look, I've fallen down on my face many times in this area, and I gave her examples of, I was coming back to these mastermind meetings, these calls every couple of weeks, and realizing, 20 minutes before the call, I hadn't even looked at my notes from the last time, and there were these things I was going to do, and so I explained to her what I had done to change that. Which, for anyone who wants to know, is I've made a point of going back to my notes right away. And for me, and everyone, probably could do this a little bit differently, but a task for me will be to apply all of my actions, I call them, to my calendar, to schedule those. And I know that they have to be scheduled, like in the case that I was referring to with my client, in 2 weeks. So that day or the next day, I have to make sure that stuff gets on my calendar and that there's time to work for it. And so that's one of the things that I always say. Do you find in your world that it not only that there's a number of people that haven't heard of them, but that do you find yourself recommending them to people very often?
I do. I will, especially if I meet someone who talks about wishing that they had guidance, and especially, and not that we should treat each other as endlessly free resources, because we're giving time and of ourselves, but especially if there's somebody who expresses that they don't feel like they have the budget for consultants to come in and help them. And I get that, because we all are in different stages with our budgets for our organizations. And so a lot of times that's one of the first things I'll recommend is like, well, before you go hire an expensive consultant, see if you can just get together and brainstorm with a group of like-minded professionals and, or go and seek someone out, or I might even say, do an informational interview, which is go seek out someone who's, you perceive as being ahead of you and maybe where you want to be, and talk to them, because if they're a good, decent person, they're going to give you their time.
Yeah. Depending on how you ask.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Let me switch gears. I don't want to forget about this one, but I think you used the words segmenting time a little while ago, and it reminded me that in the last couple of weeks in one of our mastermind groups, you had mentioned that you'd made a commitment to yourself earlier at a call I missed, but that you were going to restructure your work time. And I hesitate for a second to call it create a little more work balance or work-life balance, but I suppose in a nutshell, that's what it is. So you had said you were going to, you needed to make some changes, or felt like you wanted to make some changes, that you'd stop working by a certain hour during the week. And then I guess the suggestion came that why don't you just take the weekends off too? That would be good. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Why you made the decision and what it's done for you? What do you think it's going to do for you?
I have been, so a thing I have worked on, I want to say forever, but that's a bit dramatic, but for so long, even when I worked for someone else, a thing I have worked on is being a workaholic. I think, I had wonderful, amazing parents, and I think somehow I over-received the message about being a productive human being. And so I have always grappled with being a workaholic. And I do think that, my darling late husband, I think that he helped keep that in check. I was still always a workaholic while we were together, but I think he found good ways to balance it out. And then I think, going back to my own, left on my own again, like a little creature in the wild, I think I went back to it and I found myself again in a world where I'm sitting there and I might think I'm relaxing because I might be on the couch with the TV on, but my laptop is open and I'm not playing, I'm not playing on social media. I'm working or grading a paper or something. And I got to a point where I thought, well, I'm in this place right now where I've taken on too much because I'm finishing a book and I'm finishing a dissertation and I'm still teaching and doing the other things, aspects of running my business. So I recognized that at some point I needed to see some of that through and hit some of those goals. But that once I did, I recognized this is an opportunity now to make some changes in your life. Mm-hmm. And so I've taken this, this milestone completion of the dissertation and the PhD to say, this is the time to change your life. I think we all get these opportunities or we can make them. And so that's what that's about. And so I jokingly say to people, so I can see how normal people live, in which case most people who know me say, you're never going to be normal. I say, thank you for that, but it's true. I am who I am. But that I look forward to reading, maybe playing a video game. And, it's not that I don't go out and socialize, but I look forward to going out and socializing and not being tired or not thinking, well, I have to get up at 6 a.m. to do this thing. So I look forward to the freedom of whatever that brings, even if it's just to work my way through my list of projects that should be done around the house. Whatever it means, I'm looking forward to it. And so far, so good. It's only been, I think this is only the third week. And I have not worked past 5, and I'm not working on the weekends, and I'm loving it. Even though a couple of times it feels weird. Like a couple of times I'm sitting there and I'm like, my laptop should be open. And then I'm like, why? Why? No one's going to die if you don't answer them until tomorrow. Everyone will be fine. I'm not a surgeon,
Mm-hmm. Well, good for you. Are you finding that when you get back to your productivity hours that you feel the benefits, be it through clarity or just your ability to be more focused, do deeper work?
Yes, I do. And one of the things that I'm really working on is I feel like in the past I worked in order to meet specific goals, and now I'm working to fit my goals within the work life that I want to have.
That's cool. I venture to say that you're going to be meeting your goals with almost the same rapidness that you were going to the other way, because you were coming back with a much higher level of energy and clarity. But we shall see.
I think you're right.
We shall see. The month is young.
I think you're completely right. I don't think it's like all of a sudden I'm going to, however we measure ourselves, I don't think I'm all of a sudden going to make less money. I bet you I make the same or have better opportunities come my way. I bet you that I will, I'll be better, have better energy, more creativity. I think so.
It's funny how that works. Well, we'll have to check in. I know I will be, because we talk to each other.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I could backslide. Like, this is a thing. I'm not kidding. I have worked on this all my professional life. I'm a candidate to backslide.
Not anymore.
I need a 12-step meeting for workaholics.
Yeah, not anymore. You have your mastermind groups to be your 12-step.
Exactly.
So, to get back into the business of project management and the things you do there, you've had these long-standing facets of the business online, which have evolved and are maybe taking on a new role or a new personality or a new level of contribution to the overall Margaret Meloni economic engine. But so you have margaretmeloni.com, and you're selling some long-standing products that are courses on there, right?
Yes, and also pmstudent.com.
Okay, I forgot about that one. Yeah,
that's okay.
pmstudent.com. Mm-hmm. I guess so. One thing I was hoping you'd talk about, and maybe it's about, well, I just want you to talk about it. Whatever the reality of it is your lead magnet that you have on. This was on margaretmeloni.com. I'm on there and I'm like, oh, cool. She's got a lead magnet here, and so you have a giveaway for stakeholder management, and it's to sign up for your email list to get insights and things on the world of project management. How's that working? And just anything that you can share about the use of your lead magnet would be wonderful.
I recently got an inquiry from someone who works for a publishing house, and one of the areas they specialize in is project management. And she came to my site, unbeknownst to me, and signed up for that guide and read it and approached me. And it may or may not come to fruition, we're just having conversations right now, and approached me and said, because of this thing that you give away, I can see that you know how to teach an idea in an accessible way without making it overcomplicated. And would you like to write a book for us?
I'll be
I
darned.
mean, so that's pretty cool. In terms of, I'll say the regular normal signups, I mean, it really does help build a community. With the things I've been active with the last few months, have not done as great a job as keeping my list engaged. But I'm happy to say that when I do, they're responsive. And so as I'm, rewriting my work life, it's how can I continue to build that engagement, keep the engagement with my list. But I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with it. And on PM Student, I have a somewhat similar type of lead. And I mean, it's true what everyone tells us, even though at first it doesn't make sense, that it really works for you. And it really helps bring people to you. And certainly on PM Student, I can absolutely trace people who sign up and then people who buy.
And on that one, you have, I should mention these on PM Student, and then you can help me with the title for the other one if I don't think I'll be able to see it again, or at least not at will, not knowing how to bring it back up. But on pmstudent.com, you have a lead magnet that is quick tips for gathering lessons learned, and then a blurb about signing up, and you are giving away this quick tips for gathering lessons learned, a PM Student mini lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is, can you refresh my memory? Do you remember the title of it off the top of your head?
I think the other one is, I think it's a guide for passing the PMP exam, possibly.
Yes.
Were you talking about the one on Margaret Meloni or?
Yeah.
Or on PM Student?
Margaret Meloni.
Yeah, there's one about because another thing that is very important to project managers is certification. And so I don't create certification courses, but I have a colleague who does, and I think he does a great job. And so I promote his items. And so I have that also. And so that's gives me two different leads on that site. One would be if you come, you already have your certification, but you're interested in more project management tips. Hopefully you'll sign up for the lessons learned. And if you are interested in the certification, you might sign up for the other. You can certainly sign up for both. And then with the item that's for the certification, one thing that works very well with that one is a series of auto responders that are designed hopefully to be helpful and not annoying. Mm-hmm. And they're different tips and different conversation and me recounting to people I remember when I was studying for the exam, with some discussion on why these materials that I promote are helpful and where to find them. And I can't remember the conversion rate off the top of my head, but I do sell those courses, as an affiliate, and I get a nice little bump most months. I will tell you, the person I work with, sometimes he pays monthly, sometimes he pays quarterly. Mm-hmm. That could be more consistent, but I get a nice bump when the time comes for the payout.
Cool. So it does work, and it's working for you.
So it does work. Absolutely. I mean, it certainly takes adjusting.
Yeah. It's funny too. I think that you get a snowball effect as you adjust and keep creating your content. And I've seen this, you start seeing more signups than there, but the beginning period, unless you're some kind of master at it, the beginning period is like crickets, seemingly. And then there's one, and maybe a month goes by and there's another one. But yeah, it does kind of snowball, which is cool.
It's true. I can remember that. I do. I remember that being like, oh my, so I used to have, every time I sign up, I used to have that come to my personal email. And now I don't do that anymore, because the good news is now it would be too much. But when I was new, it was just like so exciting. And it is such a rewarding feeling to go like, somebody cared about my stuff.
I didn't have that in the beginning, and I did a site migration of this membership community, which you know about, and actually some of the listeners will too, from partnerforleads.com, the original website, to something that runs on WordPress and MemberPress. And so I integrated some an email platform and I thought, let me go ahead and let it notify me when I get new signups, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then there's another, oh, that's cool. But I've already started seeing, well, I don't need to keep all these. I'll just keep the last one that came in to remind me to go check. But I can already,
there you go.
I can already see it's quickly going to be, all right, I don't need that anymore. I just need to make sure that I'm getting in there and creating new content, and I can see the new signups and figure out what's working well. So
yeah, but it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. One thing I admire about you and appreciate about you that I wanted to mention is your goal setting, and we had an opportunity to talk about one of them just this week. This is an opportunity for me to talk to you a little bit more about it and share it with others at the same time. But in our Writers Unite Mastermind, one of the goals you had already set for yourself was to sell 1,000 copies of your new book by November. For some, that might seem very modest. To me, I was like, wow, 1,000 copies. And I kept thinking, where did you get that number? And so can you, for people who might be in my camp, was like, wow, that's kind of a big number. Where'd you get that? Where did you get that number? What motivated you?
That's a great question. Let me think about that. Okay, so I don't remember reading it a precise place, but so I will share with you the influences. The influences that helped me pick that number was that when I was writing the book, and I worked with a group, I was part of another group where somebody was coaching us on writing and getting our book out there. The comment that came up a lot, and that I think a lot of us, if we read, comes up, is that a lot of new authors only sell to family and friends, and then that's the end of it, and that a lot of people don't even sell 100 copies of their book. And I thought, man, I'm not doing it just for that. So there's that. And then because of the way I did it, since it's self-published, that means I paid to have it published. Somebody didn't pay me. And so there's part of me that I'd like to recoup some of those costs of paying for it. So there's that. And then the other part was by setting that goal, and by the way, it feels daunting to me because again, I'm new and nobody knows who I am, and all these different things and all these self-doubt things that many of us do to ourselves as people who work on their own. And other human beings too, right? I thought, if I don't set a big enough goal, I could become one of those people who writes a book and then just lets it sit on Amazon and doesn't do anything to take care of the care and feeding. Because that's another thing that happens too. Is you sell it at first, your family and friends buy it. You maybe don't sell even 100, or maybe you sell 100, and then it gets forgotten about, and then it sits there on the virtual bookshelf gathering dust. And I thought, I don't want that to happen. So if I set this goal out, then if I don't make it, it's not going to be because I didn't try. And so the point of the 1,000 is to remind me, this is important to you. This is an important part of your work world. What are you doing about it?
My friend and former guest of this podcast, Carrie Brandow, who is recently created her and her husband, they're on a venture with an app called Salonch, which is a bit of an ecosystem for the salon world to help bring people who students of the beauty school world to the owners of salons. She had said something to me during that interview along the lines of, the worst thing that I can imagine is to be near, and she didn't use these words, I'm terribly paraphrasing, but, basically be in her last days and thinking, I didn't try. Very similar to what you just said. If you don't make it, and I really like that and appreciate it, because I think the thing that would give me pause to try and do something like that is the first thing that that runs around in my head is I can't, sell 1,000 copies by November. How's that going to make me feel? Well, I don't think enough about, and others perhaps don't think enough about the fact that, hey, it won't be because you didn't try, and that's a good thing.
Right. And I mean, right now, I'm not sitting here knowing, Roberto, here's exactly how I'm going to do it. And other people maybe would. So I'm not sitting here going, and here's exactly how I'm going to sell 1,000. I just know that I'm going to really work to come up with these different ways to get this out there. Because again, this is a message I feel strongly about too. I'm
so excited to watch you and to be part of the Writers Unite group so that we can work on these things together. And I know I'm going to learn a lot, and really grateful for the opportunity. One last little thing before I let you go. I've gathered, or I assume, that your email list has really evolved over time because your business has evolved. And it sounded like a while back when we were talking about email lists that you were reconfiguring in your mind how the email list would serve not only, what you were trying to do, but how it was going to serve the community that it was originally intended for. Can you describe that? Am I right that it has, the original goals and objectives and expectations of that email list, which has been around for maybe years now, has changed, and what you're thinking, for the rest of the year and beyond for that list?
That's a great question. So initially, it is really about reestablishing regular contact with the list, because I will admit to have been sporadic over the last few months. So it is definitely about that. And the way that I will find inspiration for that is I will go and look at my blog posts and see which ones are the most popular. Any comments or questions that I've received. Questions that when I teach in person that people ask all the time. Sometimes I send out a survey, but I don't think I'll send out a survey yet. And then I do have a YouTube channel for that pmstudent.com website, and I'm going to go and re-engage with that YouTube channel to see what's getting watched the most, and if people are posting comments, what are they saying? And that will all be used to inform how to best re-engage and bring content to the group. And then occasionally I will send things, so for example, when I was launching the book, I thought long and hard about this, and I did go to the list about that, even though it was a different topic. But when I did, I approached it very gently and carefully. And I think I said in the first sentence, this is not something I normally talk to you about. And then I think I next said something about and here's what I want to share with you. And so if you're not interested, this is your opportunity to, to delete this now or something. I mean, I didn't want them to opt out from the list, but I just wanted them to know that I'm approaching you with another aspect of myself as a human being and as a professional. And if that's not what you want from me, delete this. I was really pleasantly surprised with the results from that. And did some people actually opt out? Yes. But the same number that kind of opted out, the same percentage that opted out anytime I send out a regular email that's on topic. So those are just my initial thoughts of that. I'm hoping I'm answering what you were asking, by the way.
I think as I was uttering all the words for the question, it's kind of a tough question, but it was really to speak to the point that your and that was great. Thanks for sharing that. Your business and your professional life has evolved quite a bit. And as such, the way you work with your tribe and your list is evolving. And that was a nice example of how you've been doing it. Margaret, thank you for spending time with me today. Let me know if I got this right. There are a couple places people need to go to find out about who you are and what you're doing in these different worlds. MargaretMeloni.com, and it's Meloni is MELONI, and then yes. CarpoolingWithDeath.com, and then PMStudent.com.
Absolutely.
That's 3 places. I probably should have just done one. That's good.
Well, it's good for people to have options.
Yes, options are good. Well, Margaret, thank you again. I know this is going to be a great episode, and I really appreciate you. And I look forward to talking with you again soon. Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you have a couple of extra minutes, please leave a review. It helps this podcast, and more importantly, it'll help other small businesses and entrepreneurs find the podcast so that they too can learn from the trial and error, the expertise, the insights of successful business owners like you. Are you struggling to get the word out about your business? Struggling to get in front of the right prospects at the right time? Head over to partnerforleads.blog to join our community. As a member, you'll get an occasional email from me with tips, hacks, stuff I'm learning from guests of this podcast. This is all stuff you can use to grow your business. It's free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Ciao for now.